Hello everybody and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us today for this International Solar Energy Society webinar organised together with REN21. The webinar will begin shortly and will discuss the global status of renewable energy. We have just over 430 people registered for this webinar from all around the world. So we are delighted that you could join us today online and look forward to your participation and also to your questions in our Q&A session after the presentation. Before we begin with the webinar presentation, I would like to inform you about what the International Solar Energy Society is and stands for. So the International Solar Energy Society, ISES, is a non-profit UN-accredited NGO. We are membership-based and the ISES vision is to achieve 100% renewable energy for all used efficiently and wisely. Our society represents a diverse membership of academics, researchers, energy practitioners, consultants, students, businesses and advocates. ISES works together with like-minded organizations from countries around the world to advance the renewable energy transformation. By becoming a member of ISES, you are supporting the 100% renewable energy movement. The presentations and recording of this webinar will be available for 24 hours on the ISES website. After that time, I will post them to the ISES members area. For members that are online today, you know that all you have to do is log into your account under join.ises.org. So log in and click on Members area in the top level menu and you will already see the library of our past webinars. If you are not yet a member, please visit our membership page and have a look at the different membership services and benefits, and we encourage you and welcome you to sign up. So that's the same website address, join.ises.org. You are welcome and encouraged to ask questions at any time throughout the webinar. To ask a question, select the questions pane on your screen and type in your question. The questions will be addressed after all the presentations in the Q&A session. So we really encourage you to get involved in the discussion and post your comments, your feedback, questions you might have for our panelist speaker today. We would also like to encourage you to use the ISES discussion forum on LinkedIn to continue the Q&A and the discussion even after this webinar has ended. Great. Well, now I would like to introduce Dr. David Renné, who is the President of the International Solar Energy Society, and he will take it from here and moderate the webinar. I hope you all enjoy the webinar, and Dave, the floor is now yours.
Well, thank you very much, Joanna, and welcome everybody to our webinar on Renewables 2016 Global Status Report, we're very honored to have this webinar being presented by Christine Lenz. Christine was appointed as the Executive Secretary of REN21, or the Renewable Energy Policy Network of the 21st Century, back in July of 2011. REN21 is a global public-private multi-stakeholder network on renewable energy headquartered at the United Nations Environment Programme's offices in Paris, France. Between 2001 and 2011, Christine served as the Secretary General of the European Renewable Energy Council, which was the united voice of Europe's renewable energy industry in Brussels. Previously, she worked in a regional energy agency in Austria, promoting energy efficiency and renewable energy sources. So now I'm very pleased to turn the microphone over to Christine Lenz, and I look forward very much to your presentation, and then I look forward to the opportunity to have a question and answer session following your presentation. For those of you who have questions, please, as Joanna described, please enter your questions into the questions pane on your computer. Okay, Christine.
Thank you very much, Dave. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. And thanks to ISES, thanks also to Joanna for the introduction, for hosting today's webinar. It's our pleasure to share with you the latest insights into the global status of renewable energy based on REN21's Renewables 2016 Global Status Report that was launched on the 1st of June at the Clean Energy Ministerial meeting in San Francisco in California. It was already mentioned, REN21 is a global multi-stakeholder network dedicated to the rapid uptake of renewable energy worldwide. We are basically a multi-stakeholder coalition of the willing, both of the private and the public sector, that want to advance renewable energy, composed of NGOs, industry associations, science and academia actors, international organizations, and national governments. ISES is a member of REN21 since its early days, and we are issuing this year already for the 11th time an annual report providing an overview on the global market and industry trends in renewable energy, on investment flows, policy landscape, distributed renewable energy for energy access, and also providing a bridge to energy efficiency, because we think that not only demand side measures, not only supply side measures are important, but it is also important to focus on the demand side. This year's report has a feature on community energy. The report covers all technologies and all sectors from power, heating, cooling, and transport. All the data that we collect is available on REN21's Renewables interactive map that can be accessed on the link provided there. And we are only able to tell the story of renewable energy so completely thanks to the contributions of our network. We have more than 700 experts in renewable energy, energy access, and energy efficiency engaging continuously with REN21, providing data and providing the latest information. Just to give you an example, in 2016 we had 180 experts joining the report process, which is equivalent to the total number of GSR experts in 2012. So these numbers already show that the community is growing, and I'm sure that many of the participants in today's webinar are actually contributing data to the GSR. And at this stage, a big thank you also from REN21 on behalf of REN21 for your contributions. If you do not yet contribute, please contact us. This is an open network and an open community. You are very welcome to join. So, in a nutshell, 2015 was an extraordinary year for renewable energy. We had 147 gigawatt of renewable power capacity additions in 2015, which represents the largest annual increase ever. There was an increase in renewables heat capacity of 38 gigawatt thermal, and we also see that the total biofuels production rose. This growth occurred despite tumbling global prices for all fossil fuels, ongoing fossil fuel subsidies, and other challenges facing renewables, including the integration of rising shares of renewables generation, policy and political instability, regulatory barriers, and some fiscal constraints in some jurisdictions. People are not only competitive in football, but they are also competitive when it comes to renewable energy. So what we do in the Global Status Report is providing an overview of the renewable energy champions. And when you actually look into annual investment, capacity additions and production, that's the first line on my slide. The list in absolute terms reads China, United States, Japan, United Kingdom, and India. However, when you look at investment in renewables power and fuels per unit of GDP, then we clearly see that the list is completely different. It reads Mauritania, Honduras, Uruguay, Morocco, Jamaica, which already indicates that emerging economies and developing countries are rapidly advancing renewables, which for me is a clear result of falling prices of many of these technologies. When you look in champions in terms of total capacity, again, in absolute terms, usual suspects when it comes renewables power capacity per capita, you see that the list is still very Europe-dominated. Denmark, Germany, Sweden, Spain, Portugal, here in the third line, which just underlines the high share of variable renewables in many European countries. So when it comes to policy, we see that the vast majority of countries worldwide have renewable energy policy support in place by the end of 2015. These policies received increased interest during the year as part of global effort to mitigate global climate change during COP21 in Paris. However, the impact of Paris is not yet visible on these slides, as Paris only occurred at the end of 2015. So we had all in all 173 countries with renewable energy targets, out of which 146 had support policies in place, 114 in the power sector, the majority, that's the blue line, 66 in the transport sector, and 21 with policies for heating and cooling. As far as instruments are concerned, you also see there on the slide still the prevailing instrument in the power sector are the feed-in tariffs. However, we see that tendering, auctions, and net metering is gaining in prominence and in importance. So when we actually look at the map of the world, we see that electricity continues to dominate policymakers' focus, as you can see on the slide. Regulatory policies in the power sector cover over 87% of world population. That's the blue map. While regulatory policies in the heating and cooling sector cover only 50%. That's the orange map on the bottom, and 73% for the transport sector. That's the green map there on the right. So effectively, advancement of renewable energy in the power sector was the biggest. There, renewable energy comprised about 29% of global power generation capacity at the end of 2015, and about 24% of global electricity demand was produced from renewables. The most significant growth of renewables occurred in the power sector, with an increase of almost 9% over 2014, bringing the total renewables power capacity up to 1,849 gigawatts. In 2015, renewables made up an estimated 60% of net additions to global power capacity and represented far higher share of capacity added in several countries around the world. For example, 77% of all net additions of power capacity in the European Union were renewables-based. The champion sector, the two champion sectors in 2015 were clearly wind and solar PV. Solar PV added 50 gigawatts. The solar PV market was up 25% over 2014 to a record 50 gigawatts, lifting the global total to 227 gigawatts. And when you actually look at how steep the curve is, you see that the development was not progressive but really exponential. And I think it's remarkable if we see that annual PV market in 2015 was nearly 10 times the world's cumulative solar PV capacity of a decade earlier. So that's quite impressive. In 2015, we had 22 countries around the world meeting more than 1% of their electricity demand with PV, with far higher shares in some other countries, such as 7.8% in Italy, 6.5% in Greece, and 6.4% in Germany, just to name a few. As this webinar today focuses on solar technologies, I also brought a couple of slides on CSP and on solar thermal. Of course, the report, the Global Status Report, contains information about all the other renewable energy technologies such as biomass, hydro, wind, etc. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to detail those during today's webinar. The concentrating solar power market went up to a total capacity of 4.8 gigawatts, with 0.4 gigawatt added in 2015. This represents an increase of about 10%. Markets continue to shift to developing countries. We saw in 2015 Morocco adding 160 megawatts, South Africa 150, and the United States 110 megawatts. The new facilities represent a mix of parabolic trough and tower technologies, and all incorporate thermal energy storage. I think that's quite interesting and definitely different to compared to a couple of years ago. So when it comes to solar thermal heating and cooling, the total capacity of water collectors increased by more than 6% in 2015, bringing the operating global solar thermal capacity to about 435 gigawatt thermal. This rise was there despite the market slowdown, primarily due to the continued contraction of markets in China and in Europe. And these 435 gigawatt thermal were enough capacity to provide approximately 357 terawatt hours of heat annually. We also portray, as I mentioned in the introduction, the advancement of distributed renewable energy for energy access. And this is quite important because we still have the situation that 17% of global population lack electricity access. That's still about 1.2 billion people. And we still have 38% of the global population lacking access to clean cooking. There's little quantitative information existing on DRE markets. However, information that is available indicates that these markets are significant and that they are growing. So we had, for example, roughly 44 million off-grid pico-solar products had been sold globally by 2015, which represents an annual market of around $300 million US. We see that about 70 countries worldwide either had some off-grid solar PV capacity installed or had programs in place to support off-grid solar PV applications. We see that there are various policy instruments supporting the deployment of distributed renewable energy, and about 30 programs and about 20 global networks promoting distributed renewable energy, improving energy access with renewables in Africa and elsewhere. According to Bloomberg New Energy Finance, BNEF estimates that roughly $276 million US were invested in off-grid solar companies during the year 2015, which brings the total since 2010 to more than 511 million, which already shows how quickly this market is advancing. And we also see that roughly 160 million US were invested in pay-as-you-go companies in 2015, also an indication on how rapidly the sector is growing. As far as jobs are concerned, that is always an important element, especially for policymakers. We see that global employment continued to increase by about 5%. According to estimates from IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, An estimated 8.1 million direct or indirect jobs were created or are existing in the renewable energy industry. And the leading employers in 2015 were China, Brazil, United States, and India. Now, when we come to global investment, 2015 was also another record year. Also in terms of investment, there was a new record high of investment of $286 billion invested in renewables, which represents an increase of 5% compared to 2014. And these 286 billion were not evenly spread around the world, but for the first time in history, developing and emerging economies invested more, namely $156 billion, which represents an increase of 19% compared to developed countries, industrialized countries, which invested 130 billion, which represents a decrease of 8%. This decrease, or the most significant decrease, happened in Europe, where investment was down 29% to $48.8 billion. So very interesting phenomenon, clearly also an indication that costs have come down, and also I think a very interesting parameter showing that renewables are becoming part of mainstream energy mix of many countries. So as it comes to investment per sector, solar power was leading for money committed during 2015, receiving more than 56% of the total new investment in renewable energy. We had these 161 billion were, interesting enough, evenly spread between developed and developing countries, 81 versus 80 billion. What is also interesting on this slide is that it was only two sectors, namely solar power and wind, that were the two sectors where investment was growing compared to 2014. In all the other areas, renewable energy areas, there was investment, but investment was decreasing compared to the previous year, which of course also reveals some problems, structural problems, because clearly when we talk about an energy transition towards renewables and the 100% renewables goal, as ISES is advocating it, there is a need to not only focus on selected technologies, but to focus on, to promote all renewable energy technologies. We are also portraying, and we see during the last couple of years, an evolution of 100% renewable energy initiatives all around the world, with more and more cities and local governments moving in that direction. We see that cities in Australia, in Canada, in the US are committing to 100% renewables, and it's actually not only cities, but it's also corporations that commit to this 100% renewable energy objective. Many of these companies are actually grouped together in RE100, and I think that is another indication that renewables do not only make a lot of sense from an environmental perspective, but they also do from an economic one. I mentioned it earlier, this year's Global Status Report contains a feature on community renewable energy. As we know that community energy initiatives have existed since the middle of the 19th century, but have since 2008 there has been a marketed rise in initiatives focusing on community renewable energy, especially in Europe, where we have nowadays more than 2,800 energy cooperatives, out of which alone 772 in Germany. But we also see these projects rising in Australia, the United States, in Canada, Asia, Africa, and Latin America. And we clearly see that in jurisdictions where it is possible, where individuals are engaging in the energy transition, there is at the end much less resistance on the ground towards these projects. So all in all, a very positive year. However, when we look at the share of renewable energy in final energy consumption, we still see that the renewables share is slowly growing. We have at the end of 2014, that's the latest year where these global figures are available, about 19.2% of global final energy consumption were provided by renewables, where we see the share of modern renewables increasing versus the share of traditional biomass decreasing. So in conclusion, 2015 was a record year, largest global capacity additions from renewables, biggest investment to date. It was also the second year in a row where global carbon emissions associated with energy consumption remained stable while the global economy grew. But we also see that we still need more efforts to keep the majority of remaining fossil fuels in the ground in order to reach the 2% or the 1.5% climate target. There's a need to put more emphasis on renewable energy in the heating and cooling as well as in the transport sector. And I think also that in the future we need to focus more on coupling these sectors in order to look into integrated approaches, not only addressing electricity but also addressing heating and cooling and transport. And last but not least, there is a need to build a smarter, more flexible system that accommodates both centralized as well as decentralized generation. It's not an either or, it's of course a both and. All the information on the Global Status Report is available on our website, ren21.net/GSR. You'll find there key findings in English, French, Spanish, and soon Portuguese and Chinese. You also find press releases in 10 languages, and for the first time you find a video which describes the figures of the Global Status Report in 2 minutes. And you also find a microsite which for jurisdictions of low internet bandwidth provides a good overview on the information provided in the Global Status Report. With this, I thank you for your attention and hand back to Dave for any questions, discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Christine, for this extremely interesting presentation, and thank you and your team for putting together such valuable work. This document and all of these annual documents are an extremely valuable source of reference material, and I really appreciate the work that you and your team are doing. We have a number of questions coming in. I just wanted to ask one quick clarifying question. If I understood correctly, in the investments, the total investments are about $250 billion, $250 or so billion for renewable energy. And if I understood correctly, the off-grid solar investments are actually quite small relative to that full number. Is this correct? It seems like they're about 0.1% of the total investments, yet it seems off-grid solar is still a very important and perhaps even growing area of investment. I just wanted to get your clarification on that.
Yes, absolutely, Dave. You're absolutely right. Total investment is $186 billion, whereas solar off-grid attracted 276 million. However, we see that there is a huge increase in off-grid solar PV. So it's definitely an increasing market. And again, I mean, these are the numbers that these are estimates of Bloomberg New Energy Finance. As these investments are very decentralized, it is difficult to track them. And we're quite confident that they will even more rapidly grow in the years to come. But still, the lion's share of investment of the 161 billion invested in solar power or in solar were grid connected and large scale.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that clarification. So a number of questions are coming in. Let me start right from the beginning here. What do you see as the main challenges facing renewable energy production in the coming years?
Well, I think there are several. First of all, we still have a situation that in some parts of the world, some actors do not fully recognize renewables for their contribution. There is still the understanding by some actors that renewables are not reliable, that they are expensive. So I think there is still a lot that needs to be done to overcome these perceptions. Second, yes, renewables and energy efficiency were in the center of attention at the climate negotiations in Paris. In the INDCs or in the NDCs, the national determined contributions, the majority of countries have put the focus on renewable energy and energy efficiency. But we need to ensure now that these intentions are really followed by clear actions and by clear frameworks, objectives, targets, programs, whatsoever. So I think there is still a lot to do, and then also the fact that we had relatively few investments in heating and cooling and transport in the field of renewables clearly stems from the fact that the oil price last year was quite low, and we still have a situation that we don't have a fair market playing field. We still have much more investment in fossil fuel subsidies compared to renewable support. So there is still quite a distorted picture. The fossil fuel subsidies were estimated at more than $490 billion in 2014, compared with financial support of only $135 billion for renewables. And despite this, we saw the largest global capacity additions for renewables, but we also see that these fossil fuel subsidies distort the market, and there is the need to get things right also in that respect.
Okay, very good. Here's a question about the best renewable energy mix. Which countries do you see have the best mix of renewable energy production?
Well, I mean, there is not a one-size-fits-all solution. It really very much depends on what is available in the country, but clearly a mix of hydro, biomass, solar, wind is definitely a good one. We have, as I mentioned, in some countries already very high shares of electricity generated from renewables. For example, 42% of electricity demand in Denmark was generated by wind. We have more than 60% in 4 German regions or Länder. We have 15.5% of electricity demand generated by wind in Uruguay, high shares with solar PV. So there is not the magic formula. It very much depends on the resource availability in the country. But what is the good news is that all countries have abundant renewable energy potential, some more in wind, some more in hydro, some more in biomass, some more in solar. There is, and some in geothermal. There is no excuse, and I think in general that our generation doesn't have any excuse. We have the technology. We see that these technologies are cost competitive in many situations, and it really depends on political will and policy frameworks that are put in place to really make sure that the energy mix of the future is more sustainable.
Thank you for that answer. Here's a question that, even though the question is specifically for the country of Ethiopia, I'm sure it applies to other countries as well, but why is there not very much investment in solar photovoltaics in Ethiopia, even though the country has a very good policy incentive established?
Well, I think, I mean, what we need to be clear about is that also in terms of investment there is some competition going on. we have now more and more players that are becoming global, but we see that there is also money is flowing to markets where policy frameworks are clear, where they are predictable, where they are stable, and I think it's important to make investors aware about the potential. And that's why also REN21 has started together with UNIDO and other partners has started to produce regional renewable energy and energy efficiency status reports. We have launched one for the SADC region, for Sub-Saharan Africa, at CIREC in October in South Africa. We produced one for Western Africa in 2014, and we are going to release after the summer an Eastern African renewable energy status report. And one of the reasons why we do this is because by bundling activities that are going on in the region, we want to attract attention of investors to these markets in order to further develop these markets and really help these markets take off as they deserve.
Thank you. Okay, this next question, actually there's several people have submitted similar questions regarding the downturn in investment in developed countries and especially in Europe, and as opposed to the developing countries. And is this related to economic activity in general in the countries, or could you perhaps elaborate a little more on your understanding as to why there has been a reduction in investment in developed countries as opposed to developing countries, especially in Europe?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. I mean, what we see in general, I think we need to differentiate. There is a different situation in the developed economies, in the industrialized countries, the OECD countries, versus the developing nations. In Europe and in the OECD, it's all about replacing existing power infrastructures or energy infrastructures by renewable ones, whereas in emerging economies, it's all about adding capacity. So there is still the need for creating additional capacity, and so the fact that there was so much appetite for renewables is clearly an indication of falling prices for the different technologies. Of course, I would say that energy investment in Europe generally was, in the last years, was challenging because of economic parameters, and we just see that in some European countries we had, in the course of the last years, we were confronted with stop-and-go policies, and these are just very detrimental for a market because they undermine investor security and investor confidence, and make it just more difficult to attract money to these markets. When on the other hand, in the emerging economies, we see that China is playing a dominant role. China has increased its investment by 17% to about $103 billion US, which accounts 36% of the global total. But we also see renewable investment significantly increasing in India, South Africa, Mexico, Chile, Morocco, Uruguay, Philippines, Pakistan, and Honduras. So we just see, and of course, all these emerging economies are the economies which are still energy hungry, which have the need to create additional energy demand and energy supply, and have an increasing energy demand. And so these are very promising markets. So I think that this is a trend that we're going to see continue in the years to come.
Well, good. Thank you. Many questions are coming in, and by the way, I should point out that many other questioners started their question with a big thank you for your presentation. It was really excellent, so just wanted to make sure you got that point. But here's a question about do you have any analysis of long-term cost trends and projections based on your historical surveys?
Yes, we don't have them. We are not tracking costs, but IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, has recently published a study on cost developments in solar PV and in wind, if I'm not mistaken. So I would direct the participant to IRENA for details on cost developments.
And here's a question, gets back to the one I asked earlier. Do you have specific information on the ratio of off-grid solar to on-grid solar installations for the year 2015?
No, we don't have detailed statistics of how much of the 50 gigawatt that were added were on-grid versus off-grid, but clearly the majority of installations is still to be found in the on-grid segment.
And a question here about where is renewable energy most advanced in terms of education?
Well, I mean, we have lots of programs in, I would say, in the main renewable energy markets where the main jobs are to be found, that being mainly China, Brazil, United States, India, and Europe. And also for this, IRENA has put together a platform which is called ILREP, International Renewable Energy Learning Platform, where you can access a good overview on education programs, not only academic but also vocational training programs that are in place in different countries, where there's also possible then to share curricula and get some insights into the details and specifics of these education programs.
And here's kind of a related question. I can see that there is now a huge skills gap because of the large-scale deployment of renewable energy projects. And so what do you think we need to do to solve this huge skill and labor gap problem? Do you have some suggestions?
Yeah, I think what is important and what is needed is, on the one hand, of course, the creation of dedicated renewable energy curricula, but I think it is also very important to mainstream information and education programs about renewables by integrating them into general curricula, building, architecture, etc., mechanical engineering, so electrical engineering, so that they're becoming part of mainstream of what people learn about energy.
And here's a question from someone who asked about the benefits of joining REN21. If he contributes his data in REN21, then what is a data sharing policy?
So I think one of the successes of REN21 is that we are very transparent about where the information comes from. So the report, that, by the way, all the documents are available free of charge on the REN21 website, can be downloaded, and there you also find very, very detailed reference section that you can backtrack basically all the figures that are used in the report from where they come from. Also, when you open the report, you have a good overview on the contributors, so everybody who contributes is acknowledged for their contribution, and this list reads a bit like the who is who in renewable energy. So it's on the one hand the recognition that we are providing. On the other hand, of course, participation in the network comes with visibility and comes with contacts that are provided to network members. There's a dedicated section on our website about how about the possibility on how to become a member of REN21 and how to join the community, and then also what the dedicated benefits are.
Okay, now here's a question about storage. How is the market shaping up for solar PV with storage? Is the learning curve the same for storage as it is for solar PV, which, as we know, is around over 20%.
Yes, indeed, we see that storage in many parts of the world is playing an increased role. In the Global Status Report, we do not yet report so much about storage. However, we plan to expand on the cross-cutting section, technology section, where storage is a main part, because we see that that it is going to be playing a bigger role in the years to come, together with electric mobility and together with some other forms like hydrogen vehicles, etc. We see that there is a need to expanding our reporting by really focusing on more cross-cutting technologies in the years to come, and also on evolution of trends. We do not do that yet, so there is still a gap.
Okay, why do you think solar PV is more successful in comparison to solar thermal technologies these days?
Well, I think that on the one hand, I think solar PV is successful because you have both the big centralized and the decentralized installations. So it's basically used for centralized and decentralized applications, and I think it is more successful than thermal installations because it provides people with the possibility to get totally independent from the grid, whereas in many cases solar thermal applications are a support, but then they are supporting another heating system, be it biomass-based or be it gas-based or some other technology. So this total independent argument is not so much there. It's also that many jurisdictions have financially supported solar PV, sometimes more than the thermal option, and very often, especially in existing buildings, the solar PV option is easier to install than a thermal option. However, I think it's not an either-or. It should be a both-and approach, and it's important to focus on all the different technologies if we are really serious about the 100% renewable energy objective.
Now here's an interesting question by someone who also complimented you on a very good presentation. Do you think that public funding is necessary for all renewables?
Well, effectively, if we had an undistorted level playing field for all energy technologies, then the funding would not be needed. But again, I come back to the $149 billion spent on fossil fuel subsidies. These simply distort the market, and renewables need some financial support in order to be cost competitive. If all the external cost of energy production would be internalized in prices, the situation would again be a very different one. But as long as this distortion is there, it is necessary to overcome this somehow, and this is what effectively we see in many jurisdictions where renewable support is put in place. However, we also see that more and more renewables are able to compete on the market without any financial support. We had, for example, a situation that there were auctions in Brazil which were technology neutral, and then all the projects that were submitted and that were the winning ones were in the renewables field, be it wind or be it solar. So clearly there is some change going on. And last but not least, of course, renewables require very often quite high upfront investment. but then the recuperation of cost is happening over the lifetime of projects, and that often also is challenging for getting the investment in place right from the start.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer, and I also think that there's still a lot of room for research and development and innovation in the renewable energy technology field, and that's an excellent area for public support. It's in the R&D area. Here's a question about decentralized energy production in the industrial and commercial sector. These markets have large potential but seem to have a very small market volume. Is that your perception? And you have some thoughts about that?
Decentralized in the commercial sector?
In the industrial and commercial sector.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of potential here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what we see is more and more corporations such as Google, Facebook, but also IKEA and Walmart investing in renewables. On the one hand, they're committing to 100% renewable energy supply by, on the one hand, their own installations, or by buying green electricity from the grid. So I think it's the two. I think personally, I think that we're going to see more on commitments of the corporate sector happen in the field of renewables. I was personally very much struck by how dynamic the corporate sector acted at COP21 in Paris. And again, I don't think that this is greenwashing. I don't think that corporations do this purely out of environmental concerns. I think that they act in that way because they see an economic advantage. And so, yes, it's a starting point. It also has to do with how markets are liberalized and how individual energy consumers have the possibility to generate their own energy and their own electricity. But I think this is something which we're going to see more and more happen in the years to come.
What do you see are the main research challenges and issues to be addressed in the academic and the natural science research areas in order to move the world to 80% and 100% renewable energy?
Well, I think, I mean, I'm not a scientist myself, but I think where there is a lot of need for additional research is the area of integration. We have examples where we see that it is possible to operate an energy system based on very high shares of variable renewables. However, we also know that there are certain limits in that area. So clearly the focus on power system transformation, also on how business models of utilities will have to evolve in order to cope with this new situation as far as renewables integration is concerned. I also think that it is important to focus more on sector coupling, on not only looking at the electricity sector alone, but looking at the connections to heating and cooling and to transport. I think it's also important to look at, as you've just mentioned, Dave, at efficiency gains. There is still a long way to go also about efficiency of technologies, about the different resources that are used for producing the different renewable energy equipments. So clearly there is still a large room for R&D in basically all renewable energy sectors.
Okay, good. Well, the questions are flowing in. Joanna, if we come up to the hour, can we continue for a few more minutes in order to get through the questions that have been coming in the last few minutes?
Unfortunately, we have a strict deadline, so we have to finish on the hour today. But we still have time for 2 or 3 more questions.
Okay, good. Here's a question about the exportation of renewable electricity from Southern European countries and Northern European countries to Central and Northern Europe. I think that's just about about what are the options for transporting over long distances renewable electricity in Europe?
Well, exactly. I mean, in order to allow this, the transport of electricity, there needs to be an investment in power grids, in the common European infrastructure. That's something that is heavily debated at European level. That's the one thing. On the other hand, the last Renewable Energy Directive has foreseen the possibility that countries can fulfill their national targets by committing or investing in projects in other jurisdictions. We see that this has not so often been really used by countries, probably also because countries have an interest to create jobs within their jurisdictions, so that people actually benefit from these projects in the different countries. But I would say that all in all, this is an infrastructure question, and of course there is research going on and there are projects going on focusing on producing renewable electricity where the resource is most available: wind in the north, solar in the south. And clearly there is more room for a more integrated European approach when it comes to energy infrastructure.
Well, we have many more questions here. Let me try to get to one more. I'm sorry we can't get to all of them. Maybe Christine, you could respond by email to some of the questioners after the webinar is finished. But here's a good question. I think we've already touched on this a little bit, but I think it's worth maybe closing out a discussion regarding this. And that it's regarding the major obstacles for cities or large population centers towards achieving 100% renewable energy goals. Is it the lack of technology, such as energy storage, or government policy, or a lack of private investment?
Well, I think in general what we see is that cities and regional governments are more and more focusing on 100% renewable energy targets. For me personally, that is very interesting because it shows me that cities are closer to energy consumers who really want this energy transition. So so we see the trend of more cities going in that direction. However, we also see that it is not always easy, that often there are space limitations, often cities cannot fulfill and generate all the energy that is needed in the city within the perimeters of the city, so there is a need for purchasing. Sometimes cities, I mean, in liberalized market cities have the possibility to generate their own energy and to generate it and to consume it, but clearly the market rules need to be there. There's also the need to lead by example, where, for example, the public sector through green procurement can lead the way in showing people on how they can make a difference. And yes, to a certain extent also it's a money issue. So often the cities are not the ones having the greatest financial resources. But again, I think this is something about awareness and clearly something that we just see is more and more integrated in the urban agenda, that energy and sustainable energy plays an important role in order to get our cities and our regions more sustainable.
Well, Christine, thank you so much for giving us your valuable time here to give us this excellent presentation, and for also your excellent response to the questions. Looks like I better turn this over to Joanna now for her closing comments. And thank you all for your participation in this webinar.
Yes, also from me, thank you so much, Christine, for sharing your knowledge and expertise with us today. And a big thank you also to you, Dave, for guiding the discussions and taking the audience questions. It was great to hear all the insights today. I learned a lot about an extraordinary year for renewables, that was 2015. And I encourage you all to continue the discussion and connect with us on social media and on our various websites and forums to stay tuned to the global status of renewables. please use the hashtag #RenewablesRising or hashtag GSR 2016. Last but not least, thank you to our audience for joining us today. We look forward to welcoming you also at another ISES webinar. The next webinar will take place on the 25th of August 2016 and will focus on 100% renewable energy for islands. So we hope to connect with you again there. You may view the webinar recording in a couple of hours on our website. Please check the ISES website and also our YouTube channel for the recording. And as mentioned before, ISES members, you can just log into your account under join.ises.org and watch all the webinar recordings in the members area. If you have any comments or feedback, we welcome you to share this with us so that we can continue to improve our webinar service for you. Please participate in the survey or send your feedback by email if you prefer to public.relations@ises.org. Well, that's all we had time for today. Thank you so much for making this such an interactive webinar with all your questions. And I wish you a lovely start to the day or good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is in your part of the world, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Bye-bye.